In a land torn apart by endless war, one kingdom dared to dream of order. This is the story of how that dream, forged in the fires of conflict, gave birth to an empire that would define a civilization for millennia. Long before the name China echoed through history, the land we now know was a fractured tapestry of ambition and bloodshed. This was the Warring States period, an age of relentless conflict where 7 major kingdoms vied for dominance. In the east, the state of Qi prided itself on its wealth and culture. To the south, the vast kingdom of Chu sprawled across the fertile Yangtze River Valley, its armies a formidable force. In the north, Yan, Zhao, and Wei guarded the strategic heartlands, their cavalry clashing in epic battles across the Great Plains. And nestled between them was the smaller state of Han, often caught in the crossfire of its more powerful neighbors. Each kingdom fought for survival, for glory, for the mandate of heaven. Alliances were made and broken in the same breath. Cities were besieged, fields were burned, and generations of men marched to their deaths. The air was thick with the smoke of burning signal towers and the cries of battle. Philosophers and strategists debated the nature of power, war, and governance, their ideas shaping the destinies of millions. It was a time of heroes and tyrants, of grand strategies and desperate gambles. The world was a chessboard, and every move could lead to either annihilation or supremacy. Yet far to the west, shrouded by rugged mountains and considered a semi-barbaric backwater by its sophisticated eastern rivals, was the state of Qin. This was a harsh, unforgiving land, and it bred a people to match, pragmatic, disciplined, and hardened by constant struggle against nomadic tribes. For years, Qin was an afterthought, a minor player on the grand stage. Its rulers were not known for their poetry or their refined courts, but for their grit and martial prowess. They were warriors, not scholars, survivors, not dreamers. They watched the endless wars of the Central Plains with a cold, calculating gaze, understanding that the old ways of chivalry and ritual warfare were obsolete. This perception began to change in the middle of the 4th century BCE, under the rule of Duke Xiao. He was a man with a vision, a ruler who saw weakness in the chaos that engulfed the other states. He yearned for a way to transform his rugged kingdom into an unstoppable force. His public call for talent to help strengthen Qin echoed across the warring states, and it was answered by a man who would fundamentally reshape its destiny: Shang Yang. Shang Yang was a scholar of the Legalist school of thought, a philosophy as ruthless as it was effective. Legalism dismissed the Confucian ideals of morality and benevolence in governance. Instead, it argued for a system based on strict, unwavering laws, absolute state control, and a clear system of rewards and punishments. For Shang Yang, the state was a machine, and its people were cogs. Its sole purpose was to enrich the state and strengthen the army. Compassion was a weakness, order was everything. When Shang Yang presented his radical ideas to Duke Xiao, the court was in an uproar. The Qin nobility, comfortable in their inherited privileges, saw his reforms as a direct threat to their power. They argued for tradition, for the established ways. But Duke Xiao saw the potential. He saw in Shang Yang's brutal logic the key to unlocking Qin's true power. He threw his full support behind the reformer, and together they initiated a revolution from the top down. The Shang Yang reforms were sweeping and merciless. The old aristocratic system was dismantled. Land was privatized and could be bought and sold, with ownership granted to the peasants who farmed it. This simple act incentivized agricultural production like never before. The state was reorganized into centrally governed counties, breaking the power of feudal lords. A new legal code was established, and crucially, it was applied to everyone equally, from the lowest peasant to the highest nobleman. It was said that when the crown prince himself broke a minor law, Shang Yang, unable to punish the heir directly, had his tutors punished in his stead, sending a chilling message. No one was above the law. Society was re-engineered for one purpose: war. A system of 20 ranks of merit was established, based entirely on military achievement. A farmer who brought back the head of an enemy soldier could be granted land and title. A general who won a great victory could rise to the highest echelons of power, regardless of his birth. Conversely, aristocrats who failed to perform in battle could be stripped of their status. This created a society consumed by a singular, ferocious ambition. Every man in Qin knew that the path to glory lay on the battlefield. The army was transformed from a collection of feudal levies into a disciplined, meritocratic killing machine. The reforms were brutally effective. Agricultural output soared, filling the state's granaries. The treasury overflowed. The army, motivated by the promise of reward and the fear of punishment, became the most formidable military force of its time. Qin soldiers, in their simple dark armor, became feared across the land. They were not fighting for a lord or a family. They were fighting for their own advancement, for a chance to climb the ladder of merit. They were disciplined, relentless, and utterly without mercy. While the other states were still mired in the complexities of feudal obligation and courtly intrigue, Qin was becoming a centralized, totalitarian war machine. It built roads and canals not for commerce, but to move its armies faster. It standardized weights and measures not for trade, but to tax and supply its legions more efficiently. Every aspect of life, from the planting of grain to the raising of a family, was bent toward the ultimate goal of conquest. The silent mountainous kingdom in the west was beginning to cast a very long, very dark shadow. But this transformation came at a great human cost. The laws were harsh and punishments were severe. The people lived in a state of constant pressure, their lives dictated by the unyielding demands of the state. There was little room for art, philosophy, or personal freedom. There was only duty, obedience, and the pursuit of military glory. Shang Yang himself would fall victim to the brutal system he created. After Duke Xiao's death, the enemies he had made at court, including the new duke, had him executed in the most gruesome manner. Yet his reforms endured, for they had made Qin too powerful to turn back. The engine of conquest had been built, and it only needed fuel. Through this crucible of law, discipline, and war, Qin was reborn. It was no longer a forgotten backwater. It was a predator, coiled and ready to strike. It watched as its rivals weakened each other in endless, indecisive wars, patiently biding its time. The foundations had been laid. The army was ready. The state was unified in its singular, ruthless purpose. And on the edge of this gathering storm, in the final decades of the 3rd century BCE, a boy named Ying Zheng is born. A boy whose life would be shaped by the brutal legacy of Shang Yang. A boy who would inherit this perfectly honed instrument of war. As this boy grows, so does the dream, not of ruling a kingdom, but of ruling everything under heaven. Forged by blood and law, Qin was reborn. But to rule the world, it needed more than order. It needed a conqueror. The stage was set for the final act of the Warring States period and for the rise of China's first emperor. Thank you for watching this journey into the origins of the Qin Dynasty. If you found this story as fascinating as we do, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next episode. The Warring States and the boy who would be emperor. We'll see you next time.